Alright, in this video we are going to be talking about a very special tool called the pen tool. Now the pen tool is the tool that most students I think have the hardest time getting comfortable with. In fact, many students have told me that they really dislike it, but that's generally because there's not a full understanding of why it's doing what it's doing. The pen tool is really not an intuitive tool. It's the type of tool where you need to learn to operate it the way you would learn to operate some sort of a machine. It's not like the brush tool where we're just drawing and it's doing what we want it to do. The pen tool, in reality, we are going to be working with several tools, usually. The pen tool doesn't generally work by itself. And so as you can see, the pen tool right here, in the lower right of it, we've got that little white arrow. And when I click and hold it, you can see that underneath that, I have the Add Anchor Point tool, the Delete Anchor Point tool, the Convert Anchor Point tool. Now, each of these have their own keyboard shortcuts. The keyboard shortcut for the pen tool is P. The keyboard shortcut for the Add Anchor Point tool is plus. The keyboard shortcut for the Delete Anchor Point tool is the minus sign, and the keyboard shortcut for the Convert Anchor Point tool is Shift C. Now, another tool that we're going to use very frequently with the pen tool is the Direct Select tool, which again we learned about in an earlier video, and the keyboard shortcut to that is the letter A. So, when I select the pen tool, if I come in here and I try to just click and draw something, that obviously doesn't work. Here I get this weird lines coming out of it, and it's creating this abstract shape, and I have no idea why. That is often people's first impressions of the pen tool. So let's look a little more closely at what the pen tool is doing and how to operate it. The pen tool is an incredible tool for precision drawing in Illustrator. It's also a tool that's used in Photoshop and used in InDesign as well. In all cases, it's doing vector graphics though. So with the pen tool, what we are doing is we are actually creating the points, the individual points that are going to make our line or our shape. We are also deciding how we want the line to move from one point to the next. So this is why it's such a great precision tool. So if I were to come here with my pen tool and just come onto a blank page and just click, I'm just going to click and release. I didn't drag anything. You'll see that it made a point right there. Now if I come over to another point on my sheet here and on my artboard and I just click again, I didn't drag anything, I just clicked and released, you'll see that it's made a second point and a line has automatically connected that first point to the second point. Now if I come down here and I just click a third point, click a fourth point, and then if I come back up to my original point, you'll see a little circle appears back down in the lower right of my pen tool cursor. That cursor tells me that I'm about to close my shape. I'm about to not create a new point, but just direct the line to go from the last point that I created to the first point that I created and close this shape. So when I click on there, it puts a line between those 2 points, and now I have 4 points with 4 lines separating them, and I have a shape. Okay, so that is the basics of what the pen tool is doing. We are telling it where we want our points to be, and we are allowing the program to automatically connect those points with lines. Now, in this particular case, these lines have no curve. These are just straight lines going from one point to the next, and the pen tool is also used to create curves when we want those, and we're going to look at that in just a minute. But before I do that, let's look at a couple of the other points or tools that we would use with the pen tool, and that is the Create Anchor Point tool and Delete Anchor Point tool. So if I come over here and I go to my Create Anchor Point tool, or the Add Anchor Point tool, we have 4 points already. If I just come and I click anywhere on this line, anywhere on this path, and where I don't have a point already, it's going to make a point there. So by adding a point there, I've made it so that I can now manipulate that point. I can come to my Direct Select tool, for example, and grab that point and move it somewhere else, and now I have a totally different shape. Or I can move that down like that. Now I have a totally different shape. So that is the Add Anchor Point tool. The Add Anchor Point is going to just allow us to put additional anchor points anywhere on the path that we would like. Now, The opposite of that, obviously, is the delete anchor point tool. The delete anchor point tool allows us to remove any points that we already have. So I can come and just put my mouse on that point there, and I can click it, and it gets rid of that point, and this line is reestablished to run between the point that was before the one I deleted to the point that is after the one I deleted. So let's look at that again in working with the shape that we drew here. Right now, we have this first point sending a line to this second point, which sends a line to this third point. So what would happen if I were to delete this second point? Well, what happens is the first point then needs to send its line directly to the third point. So you'll see when I delete this second anchor point, the line totally changes and becomes a diagonal line because it no longer has any destination out here. It needs to go directly to that third point. Okay, so those are the add. I'm going to go here. I did the keyboard shortcut of the plus sign to go back to my add anchor point tool. I've added that back, and now I'm going to go to my A for my direct select tool, and I can put that back where I want it. So those are the pen tool, the add anchor point tool, and the delete anchor point tool.